Hey everybody, this is Pedro.
This is Jackson.
And you're watching Solid Foundation. In this episode, we want to cover a few basic things, but we want to go over the full buying process.
Yeah.
So from a client's perspective, from the beginning all the way to the end, things that a client should do before they even start searching, all the way to the closing table, and even maybe after what happens after closing.
Yeah. So I mean, this is a really actually fun video. It should be A to Z. How to go through the closing process so that buyers are informed. This is the buying process. We'll probably put out another one that's for the selling side, but this is just going to be the buying side today. But the first place most people try to go is like they just start to look at houses, and I think they get really ahead of themselves, right when they go and do just searching for houses. So Pedro, what's a good tip, that first thing they should actually start doing where they don't get lost in just looking at the nice kitchens?
I think that's a good point you made. I think the first step to do is to get in touch with a lender, right? Because what you want to know is, before I look into any houses, I want to know what I can actually afford, right? I don't want to be house broke. But I also, maybe if I can afford something I really want, it could be a lot higher than I expected it, or maybe a lot less. But I want to know really. So the first step is definitely to get in touch with a lender, right? And this is a very unique time where you can definitely shop around for rates, right?
Yeah.
But at least you know what that number looks like. But I think the most important thing that customers should be asking the lender is, hey, this is my monthly mortgage payment that I want to be at. What does that translate to as far as the loan amount?
Yeah.
Right? Know how much you can afford monthly.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great starting point. I think something too that people, really forget is, why am I looking to? I think you should probably figure out, more my payment, why am I looking? Am I looking to upgrade? Do I need more space? Do I want more land, right? Everyone's living situation changes over time, and normally that's what provokes people to move around.
Yes.
So you want to think about that and just start doing that and look at your payment cost in what's changing, right? Because a lot of people come from renting, and there's some costs that are included. There's maintenance and stuff that's not as hard to do if you're a renter versus a homeowner. So do the cost outweigh the pros and cons? And then is it worth it? It normally is, but is it worth it to pay a little more on a mortgage, versus rent? You may not get the same rent number, but at least you own a home,
right?
Own a piece of America.
And then another step I think is necessary after that. I like everything you say and I agree with it 100%. But I think a lot of times, to have that realistic expectation of what you want versus what you actually need, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a big difference. I mean, I want a mansion. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
Right? But
we all do.
Is it worth it? Is it something that I could actually get now? Is it more important to me to secure a house that will start building equity for me? Or do I just wait for the right time when I make more money to get to the dream house? Do I even need the dream house right now? Is that even a possibility? So I think it might be even a conversation with family members, right? If you're a family, head of a household, and you want to consider your kids, your wife, everyone who has a say, maybe have that discussion. Write down a list of what is important to us in the house, right? What are the things that we want, but also what are the necessities? What do we really need to have?
Yeah, no, I like that. I think, this is a great point, and it comes a lot. Like I said, it comes when we start to show houses. We meet somebody at the front door and they haven't done these things. We're kind of doing it in the house, and we're losing out on some time. Whenever, you guys as a consumer, as a buyer, if you do it beforehand and know that not every house is perfect. Right. Like Pedro said, you're not going to have the mansion, you're not going to get the pool, in your first house. Are you going to use the pool? What's the weather like in the market that you're at? Is it worth the cost? Thinking about all of that, you can really save some time. And that comes into kind of something else going into, just the consult. So Pedro, talk about that. How beneficial is it for you to meet the client beforehand before you start to go look?
I think this is probably the most important step out of all of them. I mean, even if you haven't done the pre-approval, a good consultation with a good agent can set you up in the right direction to get started the right way. But it's huge, right? During this consults, after you do your pre-qualification with a lender, after you decide what it is that you actually want versus what you need, then that's when you want to meet with the agent, talk about your goals, talk about those things that are a must-have for you. And then also just overall have a discussion with the agent as far as what this amount that you're approved for can get you realistically, right? And just overall, determine what areas could work for you, what things you're willing to consider, what things you're not willing to consider. That's how I approach it. And I think that's probably the most important thing. The two of you coming together for the same goal, which is finding you the best home that you can purchase for whatever amount it is that you're pre-approved for.
Yeah, I agree. The realtor is going to bring in so much knowledge. They're going to bring in they're a market expert. If you're looking around, and that's the thing too, we talked about shopping rates. You can shop agents too. We're definitely familiar with this in our business at this point. You look on Zillow, you look at the reviews, we get it. And you absolutely should be doing that and shopping for the best person that's the market expert. Because then when you have that consult, they're going to talk through, what areas of town interest you. Do you need a certain school district? Are you moving to be closer to work? Is that a factor? Do you work from home? They're going to ask those questions because in their head, we both do it. We have a set of homes we already kind of know when you start to talk. When you start to, give us some answers to those questions, we're like, okay, we already got an idea of where to go. And now we only have to look at like 3 houses and check some boxes off and knock some of the stuff out versus looking at like 15.
And every case by case is different, right? Maybe, it goes back to the importance of having the right agent, right? Because maybe, the area you were thinking might not even be the best area.
Yeah.
Because you didn't consider a lot of things that maybe the agent knows and is aware of that you didn't even consider. HOA prices, higher taxes, different things that will impact your payment, right?
Yeah.
So those are things that maybe the agent that knows the area and knows exactly what it is that you need can advise you and say, hey, let's not look over here. This other side of town might be the best bet if this is what you want for this price.
Well, and I think how many times I run into it a lot. I have a consult with people and they start naming some stuff off and their price point, what they can afford. And I say, have you considered new construction? And how many times do they say no? I mean, all the time, many times. And so having that conversation, you may end up in a better home for less money, without having to just search for it and do the Craigslist and try to go to every front door and figure it out. It just saves you a lot of time.
That's right.
Yeah.
And even if you had a discussion or you already compare rates, or even if you haven't, that's also another point of discussion too, because 9 times out of 10, a good agent is going to have a few people that he works with or she works with on a constant basis that could probably give you a better deal overall.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's also very important to meet with the agent for all those reasons that we mentioned. Run comps, give you ideas of marketing, different areas, everything you're looking for that's important to you. That's a discussion you can definitely have with the agent. So tell me a little bit about like the process of it itself. So you have a consultation, you meet, you discuss the goals with the client. What is the next step for you?
Yeah, for sure. So the next step definitely is looking in person. Yeah, I mean, scheduling those homes. I'm going out to take a look. We want to be diligent and focused when we go to see the homes too, because we know now we've got a whole list of stuff we're looking for, stuff we want to consider in the cost, and stuff we want to just nail down and look at. So when you're there at the home, the countertops are fancy, nice, cabinets, great, all these brand new floors, but you want to look at the bones of the house, and I think a realtor really helps you with this too. But you open all those closets, everything with the water heater in it. You want to make sure the garage door opener works. I know it's weird. Everything. Like you want to check all that stuff. You want to get a good solid blueprint of the home. Check for seller's disclosures. We want to see surveys if they have them.
Right.
We want to see that all ahead of time so that when we do find the one, we know everything to know about that house, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it until we get to an inspection. That's really the next step is finding the one. The thing is, many people have this misconception, I feel like too. You can put multiple offers on different homes at a time. Yep. You can absolutely shop around and, try to make lower offers than the listing price. People don't know that either. They think it's like a car. It's like, I might get $1,000, off the car negotiation. Let me know if you get that, by the way, because I can't get that from a car dealer anymore. Right. But yeah, so you're able to leverage what we know and what we see at the home to get money off, to get money out of the listing price and leverage that. And that's where you really start next. And then you start, you go into writing the contract.
And I want to talk about some of the things that the client should be expecting once the process starts, right? So let's say, we met with the client, we looked at a few houses, we identified the one that they want to submit an offer on. I want to touch on the process of that. So I want to start from immediately, writing the offer itself, right? So you make sure you want to sign a representation with the agent that's representing you. Make sure that relationship is legal, right? Once you establish that relationship, that you can proceed with the offer. Depending on the comms, the price, whatever that conversation is between you and the agent that is going to be unique to you and what you can do. That's when the agent would type up the offer. But the most important thing is to consider all the upfront payments, all the costs that comes with that. So can you touch on some of those payments?
Yeah, for sure. It's not just the mortgage, right? A lot of people we've already at this point discussed your payment. Talked about rates. We've kind of talked with the lender, so you kind of know what to expect on a monthly payment. But many people don't think about inspection cost. They don't think about appraisal cost and those fees that are upfront. The other thing is earnest money, and what we have here in Texas is the option fee for our option period.
Inspection period.
Or inspection period, right. So it's either one. A lot of states call it inspection period. Here we have the option to terminate no matter what. So that's why it's called the option period here. Inspection period in a lot of other states is inspection reliant. So if something safety related came up on the inspection, the buyer would have right to either renegotiate or terminate because of that clause, whereas we just don't really have to just do the inspection. But yeah, so you've got that that window and that money. I mean that prices and costs that you have to upfront do, and a lot of times you do risk it a little bit, because if you do have to renegotiate or find something on the inspection that we can't come to an agreement on, when you terminate, you lose that inspection, that price. So you have to consider how often you want to pay for an inspection, and, how many times you can risk it. And
you might even need multiple inspections too, depending on what the outcome of the first one is. Maybe it has a pool. Well, you probably want to get that inspected too. That is different. If it's a VA loan, well, you're definitely going to need a termite inspection too, right? So that's why a good agent should definitely prepare you for all these payments. But you have to consider this before you proceed with the process. It's not just a down payment. It's not just a monthly payment. There's a lot of other things that go with that. You could also shop around for insurance, right?
That's true.
The home. If it's a different tax rate on a different side of town, maybe that will help your payment too. All these things going back to the initial consult with the agent, this is going to help you a lot. But as far as the inspections, I want to talk about that a little bit in the option period. So here in Texas, it's called option period. You have the unrestricted right to terminate during however many days is negotiated in the contract. On average, you'll see 7 to 10 for the most part. It could be longer. It just depends. But during that process is where you will try to negotiate repairs. Right? If for whatever reason you can't come to an agreement with the other side, then you will have the option to terminate and get your earnest money back. You also have the option, it's a constant negotiation. Just because you already negotiated a price, it doesn't mean that you can continue, you can't continue to negotiate even further. A lot of times during this, maybe it's not so much about repairs, maybe a price reduction happens, maybe more money towards concessions. A lot of different things can happen. I've always really liked the option period. It's so flexible.
Because stuff that we knew a little bit about the house when we went and saw it, you can kind of leverage that a little more. We're already under contract now at this point. So during that period, the seller really wants the deal. A lot of times they're like, I like the buyer, I like the offer. So what can we do to make it work? And so you can leverage your inspections to either have the seller repair it, the seller give you some money, like you said, and we can work it out in negotiation. And this is a really you want an agent for this stuff.
Yeah,
like
definitely.
This is the type of thing where if the seller has a listing agent representing them, it is very hard to win as a regular consumer because they're not, it's hard to think about other options like the concessions. Can we do some of the repairs and then it's paid at closing? People just don't think about that. So those are some options you have in there. And yeah, I mean, it's very quick. I think that's the thing with option period, like Pedro said, 7 to 10 days, you got to do it quickly and do it smart.
So you want to have someone that knows who to call,
yeah,
right? Give you maybe some options for inspectors, or you can get your own one. It doesn't matter. But the most important thing is the agent is going to hold you accountable to meet all the deadlines. Everything on the contract is based on a certain date.
Yep.
Someone has to hold you accountable to that, because that's how you can easily lose your earnest money. You can put yourself in a real bad position, right? So the agent is going to be on top of the stuff.
Yeah.
The good one.
I think that's a great point about the deadlines too. And so knowing that during this process is crucial. So when you're writing the contract with your agent, make sure you talk about the deadlines when you're closing. We have to write it on our contract in Texas. When are you closing? When is the HOA documents due if it's in an HOA?
Survey.
When's the survey due? Right, exactly. And then, you do have a financing period too that's in the contract. So you have to get approval within X amount of days. So going through that and knowing that going into the contract is big too.
Yeah. So, after repairs, let's say everything is negotiated, everybody's happy, we complete the option period. I mean, at this point, what's next is probably going to be waiting for HOA docs to come.
Yeah.
Right, for the most part, if it's in an HOA area. Another thing you'll be waiting for is definitely the appraisal.
Yep.
So the agent will be letting the loan officer know that they're ready to go ahead and order that. Right. Once it's being ordered, then you pretty much have a certain time when the appraisal is due back to the client. It goes directly to the client. Whenever that happens, Jackson, I want to talk about the different scenarios that could happen on an appraisal.
Yeah.
So you have, multiple scenarios for the most common one. Let's say it appraises. Well, congratulations. You're pretty much ready to close at that point.
Good to go.
You are aware that you're buying a house that is worth exactly what you're paying for. Right. So, I mean, you feel really good about your investment, knowing that you're not overpaying or anything like that. The other case is, let's say it doesn't appraise. Let's say it comes in at $5,000, $10,000 below price. That's negotiated. What are some things that can happen? And then I want to talk about some of the things that the client can do to prepare in case, this happens.
Yeah, for sure. So basically it's all negotiable. So, in our contract, a low appraisal is not an automatic termination. So what I mean by that is the offer is not dead, right? If you have an appraisal come low, it's not the end of the world and you can renegotiate it. Most of the time, you're going to want to renegotiate it down, but you can also come up with the cash difference. So yeah, you want to, those are some of your options, but it's a lot less scary, I feel like, than people think it is. So, you want to talk about some of the options.
Yeah.
What have you done, or what works for you?
Well, I mean, I think it just depends on the goals, right? Because from house to house is going to depend. And it also depends how popular the house is, right? How attractive it is. If the client really loves it and they see the value, even above what the appraisal came at, it might be worth it for them to cover the difference.
You just pay it, yeah.
If it's one of those that maybe has 20 offers and it's very popular, the client is totally in love, they don't mind paying an extra $5 just to secure it, it might be worth it for them to cover that.
Yeah.
But if that's not the case, I mean, you have multiple options, but the most important one on the agent side, cover your client's appraisal, right? In Texas, we have something here to cover the client's appraisal, whether it appraises at that number. If it goes anything below that, the client has the option to terminate and get their earnest money back. So that's a way that the agent can secure the client's finances.
Absolutely.
But also make sure that you as a client have that conversation with the agent. What happens if it doesn't appraise? How is my earnest money being secured over here?
Yeah, no, exactly. You definitely want to ask that question as a consumer. What's really nice too is a lot of the federal loans, so FHA, VA loans are the most common. They're already protected. So, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac are not going to loan that money unless the house appraises for what you're taking the loan out on. And that really helps veteran buyers. That really helps because a lot of times you're doing $0 down and you're financing the full value of the home. So you need it to appraise, right? And so you're protected a lot of ways, but yeah, you want to definitely find out how, what's your upper and lower limit.
Right.
Because like you said, I've had people go over list price on a home because it was very popular.
They saw the value.
And they saw the value. It's a beautiful house and they wanted to pay that, and you can still make those work even if it comes a little bit low. If you're making up a cash difference already with a down payment, for example, it may not even make a difference. So, yeah.
And then on the agent side, you can do a lot of things. So let's say it came in a little bit below $5,000 or so. The client has no money to cover the difference. And let's say the list side is being very strict about not wanting to come down on the price, but your client still wants it. What can the agent do? I want to talk about some of those things.
Yeah.
Some of the things the agent can do is maybe, negotiate a smaller number. Maybe instead of just expecting the sellers to bring in the full $5,000 below, maybe $2,500 each side, right? Or maybe the agent gives a little bit of their commission towards that to cover the difference. It's a lot of things. What else, can you think of that could
help? Yeah. I mean, those are big ones. I think the other things you can do is you can fight an appraisal. And that is a whole crazy process that I'm sure we will cover eventually. But basically, if you don't agree with the appraiser, you can always appeal it, right? You can go through an appeal process. You can have a reappraisal. Now, it does delay some of your timelines, but if you are a buyer that's out there that has time, maybe you own a house already, or you want to just make sure this investment is right, you can take the time, appeal it, have a reappraisal. You can also provide comps in some situations.
The agent would help you with that, right?
Yeah, VA is a big one where you can provide comps and possibly
for reconsideration of value.
Yeah, reconsideration of value. Talk about that a little bit.
Reconsideration of value, right? Let's say I find the right house for me. I like it. It came in a little bit below. In VA terms, it's going to be known as tight water, right?
Yeah.
Whenever it comes below appraisal, you'll get a notification a few days before it comes in, letting you know that it's potentially going to be a tight water situation.
Yep.
At that point, you want to get your comps ready as the agent representing the buyer. Get your comps ready. Maybe even as the listing agent to help you with those comps too.
Yep.
Maybe make it like an actual teamwork rather than just one side against the other, especially if both clients really want to make it happen. So whenever you gather your comps, they have to be submitted back to the lender.
Yep.
So the lender is the only person who will be able to forward those comps to the VA, right? So once the VA looks at them, it also has to come, with a letter from the actual buyer saying, "Hey, I want this house to be reconsidered because of this, and that reason. Here are the comps to show that it is worth around this price." And 9 times out of 10, they will approve it if that's the case, right? Because they see that the veteran really wants it. It's something they provided the comps, they did their homework. There goes the process, right? And they usually will okay it.
Yeah, no, I've had some really, really cool purchases like that. I mean, really cool. The thing is too, when you get down to owning the home and you do a refinance, you can do a similar process as well. If you're doing a refi and you don't like the price they gave you as a refi, you can fight that too.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, there's so many options with appraisal, and I think, like I said, it's a little bit less scary than people make it out to be. With a good agent, good representation, we can negotiate that.
Right.
Figure it out.
And then I want to talk about something else, since we're in the appraisal side.
Yeah.
A lot of times it might not even be in your best interest as the buyer to even fight it, right? Because maybe, you want the sellers to come down to that price, especially if it's been on the market for a long time. They don't have any backup offers. 9 times out of 10, it will come down to the price, even if they play a little bit tough at first. So a lot of times it's pretty much like, well, it's not going to price. We already been notified. If you want this to continue and for us to close, you're either going to have to come to this price or I'm going to terminate and give Byron his money back.
Yep. And then a lot of times too, an appraisal takes a while to do. So you're probably like 3 weeks into a transaction when the appraisal happens. So like Pedro said, a lot of times the sellers are in a bit of a sticky situation. They're like, I don't want to put it back on the market.
Or maybe they're already buying another house that they have to close on and they have to sell this one.
They're in the same situation. Yeah, they could absolutely need the money out of the house to make it work on another house. So you have a lot of leverage with the appraisal. The thing is too is like making that money up and making the seller do it is definitely viable, and it's a good way to save even more good deal.
But this is why, double backing on the importance of a good agent, someone with experience. Do you think a brand new agent would know this type of things, especially on the appraisal strategies?
No, I mean, not brand new, especially. I mean, not without
not
training.
Your cousin that just got the license last week. Right?
No, yeah, definitely not. I mean, this is something that comes with a little bit of experience and just doing the research. Because finance is not our thing. I mean, we're instructed to say, hey, ask your loan officer. For a lot of stuff. But if you know it offhand and quickly as an agent, you're going to be able to help clients better, and it's going to be a huge choice you want to make.
So and if I know my client's goals, I'm going to stay firm on the sellers having to come down on the price, or it's not going to work. If I know their goals. Same way, if I know they love it and they see the value, I'm going to try to make the comps work and the reconsideration of value because I know they want it. This is what they really want. So it goes back to the initial consultation, the initial establishment of trust between both the client and the agent.
Yeah, I think too, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is something that's part of this process is constant, honest communication with your agent. You have to tell your agent what you want. I mean, we're there to do everything you want to do. We give advice and recommendations, but you're making the decision, So that's part of the process. When something uncomfortable comes up, either in an inspection or appraisal, ask your agent, call your agent, text them, whatever it may be, and ask, because we'll probably know, and we'll know how to make you either feel better or make it work how you want to do it.
And something I like to do too, just like the client has to be honest and share information with the agent has to keep the client informed at all times. Absolutely. Every time something happens, they must know what's happening, right? And also, as the agent, you want to provide value. You want your client to see what you're doing for them. So you should be sending emails. You should be calling people for updates. Tag your client on the email so they know you're doing the work. They constantly see what you're doing on their behalf. That's how you provide value. But I want to move to the process of, okay, appraisal is negotiated. Everything is good. What happens next? I know it's clear to close, right, from the lender. So the lender will give you clear to close. What happens after clear to close? And what does clear to close mean?
So clear to close is the lender's favorite saying, I like to say. And most people, when we see that in our email, everybody's happy, right? What that means is your loan is fully approved. A lot of times it's already fully underwritten too. Sometimes you get clear to close and their underwriter may need one or two things, right? But most of the time you're fully underwritten, you're approved. But there's a lot of things to consider now. So we've got clear to close, but what's my cash to close, right? How much money do I need to bring to the table to close on this house and get the keys? Right. So talk a little bit about that. And, we've got the clear to close, but now what other stuff we need to look at? So
once they get clear to close, then the bank is going to put together all the closing documents. They will send them over to the title company or the escrow agent or even a lawyer, whoever is handling the actual transaction. Once they have all those documents, and they're going to send the client and the realtor a preliminary closing disclosure. That's where you will read all the payments that we just talked about. It's also going to include your cash to close, so you understand what you have to bring to the table. You have to consider if it's a government loan that came with a down payment, that will also be part of the cash to close, to include everything else that's prorated. Taxes, HOA, any other fees that were part of that, they're going to be included there on the cash to close. So they will let you and the client see it a day before closing or so. You go over. If there are any mistakes in it, make sure to bring them up, which is important for the agent to look at it, for the client to look at it, and then have a conversation about it. Maybe even go down line by line to make sure they understand what they have to do. And then once that's good to go, you will let the title know, and then at that point, they can actually book the closing.
So one of the things too that's big when you're looking at that closing disclosure, that full breakdown of everything, go back through and remember the things you negotiated with your agent in the contract. Make sure they're there. Most commonly, we're talking about 12A1B in our contract, which is seller concessions. We're making sure that number is there and the seller has given you that amount of money, right? The other thing is your proration on your taxes. We want to make sure that's correct. This is messed up a lot with new construction because the tax value and the tax appraisal is not there yet. So they have to estimate more of the taxes. And sometimes they're really high, which could be okay because then you may get a refund later. But it's really hard when the taxes are estimated low. Because if you have low estimated taxes, you're not going to have enough in your escrow account. Which brings me into, what's an escrow account? I know that's what we do here in Texas. I think a lot of states do escrow. But talk a little bit more about that. What is that process? What happens at the closing? Where that money goes?
So the escrow account is, it's pretty much a separate account, right? And pretty much the lender is going to be in charge of that. And for the most part, is what they do is they will collect the full years of taxes, full year, and the insurance, full year. So then after that point, they will split it in 12, right? So they'll break it down in 12 months. And, you pay for the full year. Well, they'll pocket every month enough to cover the full year. And then every month it'll come out of your actual payment monthly. Right? So
it's an easy way to where you don't have to remember to pay your taxes and insurance, right? Many people they look at that monthly payment, they pay that, they're good on their house. And that's how really I recommend doing it. Some people don't do escrow and they just pay the big fat bill at the end of the year. And you can do that, but it's harder to keep up with. And an escrow account is basically there stored for you, and you don't really have to think about it. Every year when your tax bill comes out, they just pay it out of the escrow account. And that's why they're prorating and collecting at the closing table those monies, right? They're collecting that insurance and some taxes to start out, so that you can have an escrow account.
That's right. So it's very unique, and I like what you said. Some people do forget, right? If you don't have an escrow, well, you have to keep track of a lot of things yourself. And it's easy to just go on about your life, make your monthly payment, and forget that at the end of the year you have to pay $10,000.
Yeah, because a lot of people won't factor it in because their payment's lower, right? They just look at that payment number and they're like, oh, if I take taxes out, especially in Texas where our property tax is quite high, their payment's so much lower. And they're like, oh, I'll just save the money, over the year. But then, you're out $7,000 at the end of the year that you weren't expecting it, So that is all inclusive. When you go to the closing table and we're looking at the document, you sign it and you pay those monies. Some of it is going in to pay for you later, right? That's the thing to think about with your cash to close also is it's a lot of it is down payment if you are putting a down payment, but some of it is a big chunk is taxes and insurance, which at the end of the day you get the benefits of. It's not money you're just paying to close.
You're not giving it away to people.
You're not just giving it away. The same thing goes for your earnest money and your option fee that we talked about later. That's credited to you at the closing table. Once you get there, your cash to close and you're signing papers, that's really the thing.
And later on, it can be lower because later on you could also fight the appraisal. Right? If it's appraised way higher, then maybe you can fight that with comps and your agent, someone that can help you, advise you. It'll bring your payment as well a little bit lower. It could also go up too. Every year, right? Same thing with the insurance. Maybe you decide 6 months later you want to try a different company that's way lower than the previous one. Well, your payment is going to be lower too. So all those things can change. So don't think that just because you have this company, you have to stick with this for the rest of your 30 years of mortgage.
Right. And they say, they say like fixed rate, and people think that means fixed payment. Not necessarily. You do have some fluctuations as you go. A lot of times, though, it is towards your benefit. You're paying the mortgage down, you're paying insurance and taxes, stuff you're going to have to pay no matter what house you buy. Those are big things. But once you close, I know we wrote down really the last thing is funding. So many people, when they go to the closing table, they go sign the papers and they're expecting the key. Right. So what do you tell those people the actual, real deal process?
Well, they have to know, congratulations, you signed all the documents. We are just one step closer to getting your keys. However, we still have to wait for funding, right? We want to make sure that the title has enough time to work out whatever last minute documents they need. They'll send it back to the lender, then the lender will actually clear the loan and fund the loan. Right? Once that's funded, usually title will send everyone an email or even the lender saying, hey, congratulations, your loan has funded. At that point, that's when your agent should have already arranged for you as the buyer to have access to the keys, whether it's at the title company, maybe it's after you close and fund, maybe you go pick it up at the house, meet with the agent, and maybe even leave him somewhere in the house that the client can access the keys.
Yeah. So you have to consider that, right? A lot of people, I try to plan my closings early in the morning. That way, they have time to wire the money. They have time to look at all those documents that you talked about, and that way, you're going to get your keys in the same day. But many times, people work, have regular schedules, and we do have to close later in the evening. After 4 p.m.
Right.
Most wire cutoffs are at 4.
4.
So just remember that, it'll save, realtor and title a little bit of sweat, You're probably going to have to wait till the next day if you close in the afternoon, because it has to be wired funds. The reason being is just, give you a theoretical situation. Let's say you close, you sign all the papers, and you move in the same day, and then all of a sudden there's a problem with the loan.
Right.
Now it becomes a possession
situation.
Issue. You're already in the house, but the funds haven't cleared, and it can get really tough. So yeah, funding is part of this process. We do have to wait for the full funds to hit, and it can be tough to wait for that. But once you're funded, it's party time. You got
at that point, it's your house. You get your beautiful picture with your agent. Congratulations, all that good stuff. Hopefully, your agent will take care of you and share with you how much they appreciate your business and your trust. And whatever happens after that is great. Maybe a dinner, maybe something, right? But then I want to touch on some things that a buyer can do after closing to maybe start preparing for what's to come. And some activities that are very important. And I'll start with one. So the first one that I'm thinking of is mailbox keys. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So let's say your house that you're buying doesn't have your typical classic mailbox outside, and it's one of those cluster mailboxes, right? The ones with multiple for the neighborhood. Well, whenever you close, the buyer will have to take their actual closing paperwork to the nearest, or for the counties, for the areas, post office. Take your documents, right? Pretty much your CD, your closing disclosure, and everything else. And then at that point, they will order a new key for you. And then they will tell you which box will be, the one slotted for you specifically. Right? What's another thing that they should do?
Yeah, another thing, to think about, and you can do this actually right before you go to the closing, is turning utilities on. People forget this all the time. They don't do it automatically for you. I wish it was like that. But no, so you call your utility companies, your water, your power, your trash, and people forget a lot too. So make sure you do that. And your ID. I know that's something that people always forget too. You got to change your address now on your ID if it's your homestead. If it's an investment home, of course, you don't have to do that. But I mentioned something, homestead. Talk about that exemption and applying for that.
Homestead exemption is something that you must take advantage of, right? Especially if your home is your primary residence, you're not using it for business. Go declare this house as a homestead. You will get a nice tax break. Depending on whatever state you are, it'll be different. But here in Texas, it's a big deal. And it's something that you should definitely do. For the most part, it kicks in at the end of the what is it? So from whenever you close, it'll be the January of the next year is when you can file for it.
Well, I think they just changed it. I think you can file whenever you close now. But then it'll just kick on the next. It kicks on the next tax year. But you used to
get a big break for that.
You used to be able to wait until January 1 when you were living in it to apply. But now, as soon as you close, pretty much you can put the money in the mail to the tax assessor in your county and get the exemption. There's other exemptions out there too.
And that's something you can access yourself going to the county's website. Once again, your realtor, the one that knows this stuff and is intelligent, a veteran, has been around a couple times, they should be able to equip you with this information after you close. Hey, here's the application, or go to this website, fill it out. Make sure you send it over or go in person, whatever you have to do. They should equip you with information.
I think too, something, after you get in the home is, just considering if you need if you need work done on the home. I had a brain fart there for a second, but when you thinking about things to do on the home, like you want to renovate the kitchen, or you want to do the bathrooms, you want to change a toilet, sinks, stuff like that. Your realtor normally knows people too. So don't forget about us. Don't forget about us after you close. We have a lot of resources to reach out and get you those contractors, get you those people. And so that's something to consider afterward too, is if there's anything you find you need help with, we normally have a resource.
Yeah. And I mean, hopefully your great realtor should have told you that, you know, it's not just one of those things that after you close, we'll never speak again.
Right.
This is a continuous relationship, friendship that I want to make sure you understand that I'm here for the long run.
Yeah.
Even years after you close, if you need something real estate related, or even if it's not real estate related, I'm here for you. I want you to call me. If you think of anybody else who could benefit from this type of service, I want to be there.
Yeah, we have a requirement too in Texas, and I think this is all across the country, but we have to hold you guys' documents for a certain few years as well after the transaction. So if you lose your survey, this is very common. If you lose your survey, you lose a closing document that you may need to register your kid for school, for example. We normally have a lot of it on file. So, you know, that's the thing too. Always use your realtor as a resource after, because we normally have the documents, the stuff you have questions about, and we can find out.
It's easy. I can just put it on a, you know, USB and give it to you. All the documents, right?
Exactly.
So, take care of your clients, agents, and clients. Be aware of everything. Be prepared. Make the right decisions from the beginning. Don't start, you know, all over the place. I would say go in order, you know, in order to make it as smooth as possible for you.
Yeah.
And it's all about choosing the right person to represent you. And that right person should be able to steer you in the right direction and overall, you know, get you to your goal, which is finding a great house for a very good deal.
I agree. I mean, just to wrap this full up to, you know, the buying process, definitely go step by step. Do a lot of research before you start to look at homes. It's so easy to look at the neighborhood home. Right? I think a lot of people start and they see for sale signs, right? And they're like, man, let's go see the house. And it's so hard to start there. Maybe see something, you're walking into a house that's maybe $200,000 more than your budget. Now you're going to be disappointed, you know, that you can't buy that, right? It's just not in your budget yet. So definitely do the research. See, you know, ask yourself what you want. Find a good representation, you know, that will coach you and guide you through this whole way, and to make a good deal and get the closing and funding.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for this, man. I hope this helps you guys. We're going to have more videos coming to our channel, just like this one. We thank you all for watching. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Yeah, don't forget, like and subscribe.